Did you know there's only two ways to grow a real estate business? You can either chase the conversation or you can attract it. Now, here's the thing. If you believe that you can just skip the chase altogether and just get all the attraction, you're in for a rude awakening. All right, welcome back to another Re-Education Experience podcast with me, your host. Today's episode title is The Two Roads to a Real Estate Conversation. Last week, if you remember, and you're with me, especially for those that entered the Rome community, right, the free Rome community to unpack these things, we talked about tracking the right things. As a quick recap, the right things are the number of leading indicator efforts, right? Leading indicator efforts in our business. Those are when you're actively going out and making things happen. Conversations, appointments, follow-up sent, not just sitting back and watching the income that landed in your bank account this week or the solds you had this month. Fair enough? Okay, we're not going to go into that. If you need a recap, go back to the full 30-minute episode from last week, right? To start conversations, we can only do it in two ways as per the intro, which is pretty crazy. The wide world of lead generation is so big. I've actually created an ebook, 261 ways that I've come up with that you can create new leads in your business. It's a lot, right? But in reality, if you took all of those, they can break down to just two, right? We can either actively one-to-one outbound go get them, or you can passively one-to-many inbound create them. That's it. Active versus passive. That's pretty sweet. So the big wide world of lead gen is going to be broken down to that. Last week when we talked about creating the lead generation, the active efforts, the leading indicators, the planting the seeds in your business, this is what we're talking about. But now let's go carve it deeper so that you can take action and create the plan based on where you're at in your business and your experience level and the type of sources you want to dive into. So most agents don't really understand and don't sit back and ponder on the differences between the active and the passive. It's because of that, they design, what happens is a lead gen plan. They design the beautiful plan. And even though they might have come through the 7 C's with me already, the lead gen plan now is a little bit mismatched. So the goal here with this conversation about active and passive is to help you, is to get so clear with all that you've come up with that the plan does match so that you're not inefficient in your lead gen efforts, and which will then only slow you down on your path to create true results in your business. And that would not be good of me as your coach. So let me break down the why a little bit. There's an illusion of passive success. Now let me talk about this. The myth that we all have, especially today, and I found myself doing it yesterday, you guys, as I'm preparing to launch the podcast. As I'm recording this now, I'm about 12 or 13 episodes in, but as I'm actually recording this thing, I haven't yet released the first episode to the group. That's actually coming tomorrow. And I've been falling into this kind of illusion of passive success. Just post more, just build the brand. The calls will come, the people will subscribe, the people will call you, the DMs will roll in, the emails will come your way, the referrals will fly into your inbox. The advice to just post more, build brand is everywhere, but I do believe it's a trap. It's a trap, especially early on in our business. A real world example that I think if any of us have removed ourselves from a rock the last little while is Mr. Beast. As a YouTuber, right? He took over 100 videos, 100, before anything took off at all. Years and years of efforts before the results. The passive strategies, they look fast now, but they're built on slow, consistent, invisible effort to the world, right? Those years and hundreds of videos created this success picture that we see of him today. So here's the problem. Most agents don't have the luxury to wait for this traction. If we literally just post, what happens is the timeline of our lives grows and grows and grows. And at every one of these nodes, as the months go by, guess what? We have mortgage payments. We have car payments. We have food bills. We have marketing costs, and on and on and on and on. right? We don't have the luxury to wait. They need business now. I need business now. You need business now, right? I've coached dozens of agents who thought they were being productive by just building the YouTube channel, building the social platform with no audience yet. They were filming, they were creating, they were Canva-ing instead of following up, instead of engaging, instead of taking those active efforts in their business, right? There's nothing wrong with planting those seeds. But the anecdote I want you to think about is, if the fridge is empty, well, don't go farming, go hunting. If the fridge is empty, don't go farming, go hunting. And that's what we're talking about. So let's dive into the 2 paths, okay? The 2 paths for this episode. The path number 1 is active efforts. Active efforts would be simple things that we would think about in this business. This would be, phone calls. Getting up the phone. This would be DMs. So use social, but actively get out there. This would be hosting open houses to be in front of people, right? This would be going and scheduling coffee meetings, right? This would be hosting or taking part in other people's networking events. These are what's called active efforts, right? Oftentimes they're one-to-one, or you're putting yourself in a place that it's one-to-one, but many people around, so you can, efficiently get through a group of people. I do understand, and I want you to know, I know these are low leverage. Of course they are, right? But they are something that's very important, high control. Meaning that if you are there doing the active efforts, taking the initiative, you have the control of the conversation. You have control of what you do. You have control as if you can go connect with that person out of the event. You have control if you put them in your CRM, you create a follow-up effort, if you get them on your newsletter, if you give them another follow-up call, if you send something in the mail to them, if you follow them on social, if you comment on their world, right? You're the one initiating every conversation. And that's incredibly important for us to know, especially for those of us that are kind of newer in this business. Okay, so I think you get a sense for that. One of them is active. The other is passive. And what would these items be? Right, passive is kind of how I started this. This would be, your social posting, like I made today. It's one to many. Some people will engage, some people won't. I have no control over that, right? This would be things like newsletters, all right? And get it out one to many en masse. You hope you get responses and open rates and other things, but you don't know, right? Newsletters, right? This is posting and creating your YouTube channel. And week after week, month after month, whatever your cadence is, putting videos out to the world, hoping they're found and inbound comes, right? Passive, right? Just Google SEO, right? Where you're tweaking your website, adjusting the blog content, making sure your backlinks are good and go, right? This is Google, right? Things like what I'm doing now, completely passive. Podcasting, whether it's a local podcast and you're shooting stuff into, you're bringing other people into your market onto your show, or if it's a solo episode, like predominantly what I do. These ones are different though, you guys. They are high leverage, of course, on your time. Hundreds of people will see this podcast for mine, right? Rather than having hundreds of personal coaching, which I couldn't do at scale, right? But these are, of course, slower return, right? You're relying on others to respond. And I think you need to understand that. When you are relying on others, you end up either sitting back, hoping and praying, versus taking those active efforts in our business, right? Active efforts are like, if I'm going camping, I got this damn camping trip coming up here that I don't know if I'm prepared for. Lighting a fire at the night at the end of the big hike. These are going to warm us right now, right? When I light the fire, right, that's an active effort and they're warming me now, right? If I was going to flip that, a passive effort to heat would be like, I'm redoing my roof right now, which I am, to prepare for future solar panels, right? Incredible, once you've got the infrastructure set up and paid for, that at nighttime, passively, heat will come into my house for free, passively. Does that make sense? That's the kind of the metaphor I want to leave you guys with. My own personal journey when I started was very much like this. When I was 25, I was an ex-engineer turned investor realtor, all right? I didn't have much of an audience at all. Facebook was brand new. There was none of it. I was new to Calgary. So I didn't grow up here as a 25-year-old where all my friends were coming out of university. Actually, I did university 3 hours north and I grew up 8 hours north of this where I sit today. So I didn't have a network yet, right? I had a few early adopters in my world because Facebook was new and we were posting stupid stuff. And they noticed that Darren's in real estate. And then a few of them had a few of their ducks in a row where they could afford a house. So I got a few commission checks along the way just because I had some early adopters. But a lot of my people that I were meeting, because they saw me as a past engineer, now realtor, they were kind of the wait and see audience, right? To see if I was legit. Even close friends of mine, it makes sense. Could Darren actually help me sell a house? They were waiting and seeing. That was a long-term play. So my advice, right? My audience, the only way if I wanted to grow was this. I had to go out and make new contacts. I worked open houses like crazy. I joined investor groups because that was my passion, and we were in front of hundreds of people. And me and my business partner, Brett, got out there. We turned our introverted ex-engineer self into kind of wannabe, on-the-spot investor networking folks that we built a new audience with, could then connect with, and then, of course, created enough income for us to survive on in the early days, right? One of my first deals ever, I still remember, it was amazing. Walked into an open house I was hosting for Brett. He didn't want to do it, right? And he wasn't even in the market. He was just snooping the neighbor's house around the corner. And then 3 weeks later, guess what? It was a sister or a brother, I don't remember, came in and they were moving to Calgary. So guess what? The chat we had where he was coming in casually, because I got his contact, turned into a check for me because I was in that room. Because I was putting in those active efforts and I wasn't just sitting behind a screen hoping that something would come in, and I would have never been in that zone, right? Even now, of course, I use active efforts. Why? Because they work. When we actively reaching out to folks to grow this podcast audience, to get people into Rome, to take part in the workshops actively. But I'm also going to passively post and do one-to-one, one-to-many emails to steer the momentum that will hopefully come with it in time. So how? Let's talk about the how. You choosing your strategy among all of this, incredibly important. Let's go. I'm gonna two categories of people. If you are new or newer, meaning you just feel like you don't have the momentum rolling. It is very much like, and I can't get a real beat on this business. It's very likely you don't have the audience, you don't have the brand, and you might not even have the trust and support to have a true, pure being paid by passive plan yet, right? We need to build a base of just humanity, right? We need to build this base of people that are in your bucket, right? Real people, real conversations, right? But this is the opposite. A lot of new people, because you're generally newer and like different generations, they're going to the social plans. And when I talk to agents a lot, they're swinging with content. They're actually pretty good at it. They do a lot of stories. They do a ton of reels, marketing tips, but they're never actively out talking to anybody. They really hope that those 3D tours, those tours they do on other people's listings, are being the thing that drives all the inbound conversations. Because content doesn't close deals early, right? Conversations will, okay? Now, if you're growing, right? Not new and you're seeing some growth. This is where I would actually suggest, instead of, I would start suggesting layering in more in your time towards passive, but with like super intention, right? If I go back all the way to clarity, you guys, right? C=2 clarity. What did we talk about, right? You could be the creator type. A lot of the newer agents of the business are actually pretty good at this stuff, right? If you're the creator type, this could be your superpower, and it might land better than most, and you'll cut through the noise and the extra noise that's coming because of the way AI can create content, and there's gonna be busier and busier Instagram feeds than ever, right? But for the average agent, the passive efforts remain kind of noise without a foundation underneath them. And that's where we want to make sure the active efforts are layered heavy, consistent, you're maintaining them. But if you want to add in the new social media world, I would say make sure you don't do it by removing the maintenance and active strategies that you've built your whole career, or you're slowly building upon. I see agents kind of jumping ship from one going to the other because they've been in the business a few years and they've heard the term social and video and I got to take over. I want you to layer it with the active efforts that you're still doing, right? There's a moment, and I felt this, there's a moment called the trust flip, right? And maybe this resonates with you, right? There's a moment when your audience finally becomes your pipeline. There's a moment when your audience becomes your pipeline. It's pretty powerful. It's when you've had enough conversations going, You've helped enough people along the journey. You built enough brand, right, to then stop chasing, and then they flip because they see this proof of success, and you can start receiving and expecting some inbound from your one-to-many passive efforts. But that only comes if you continue to plant those seeds actively, whether you're new in your career or you're a seasoned veteran that you just want to explore the new age and to get the passive side that didn't come in when we started in this business. All right. The reality check, right? We see it over. I want you to, just last week I shared a stat that came out from NAR, right? We see it over and over again where agents report in where their business truly actually comes from. And it's always the same. That's the crazy thing among all this. Referrals, database, past client, people that they've met and nurtured and brought into their world, right? The NAR stat is, 73% of buyers and 68% of sellers still use an agent that they knew, were referred to, or had worked with before. Damn, all right? So what are the best agents doing, you guys? They're not skipping social. They're using social just to deepen the relationships, not replace them, okay? Pretty important distinction. So the what if, I would ask us, right? If, again, this podcast is meant to prompt the discussion for the Roam workshops, to prompt the gaps that might be in your business now that you're hearing as you listen to this or watch this on YouTube. What if your next deal wasn't going to come from just the like, but from a message instead, right? If you're searching those likes after the post, what if you got just as excited about how many messages you're going to send alongside of it, okay? What if your best marketing wasn't that new reel that you're so excited about, and so is your mother, but a real-time conversation? Wow, I created that reel. How about, wow, I took somebody for coffee? Big difference, right? What if instead of chasing more followers and seeing is that growing today, or being focused on who you lost, you focus on building familiarity, right? Just one person at a time. One person that needs to hear from you. One person that needs to know that you care. One person within the network, right? Rather than just another follow. Okay. You don't need to go viral. You need to get visible. All right. I made this podcast. I made a clip on it back in when I posted. I says, I'm not here to go viral. I'm here to help, right? You don't need to go viral. You need to just be visible, right? With people who matter in your world. And that's going to be different. So inside of Roam this week, you guys, you can imagine we have some things to unpack. My goal within Roam is to give a full framework to design your own 30-day conversation strategy. One that you can just deploy based on whatever avatar you are, whatever the 7 C's are, right? I want you to kind of audit your efforts again, balance your active versus passively properly, and build a real plan that will create consistent conversations for you. Now that we know from last week, the conversations are everything, the tracking and the measuring of this, but now it's which is the blend of active and passive that's going to create this sustainable business in your real estate business. All right, you guys, hopefully this was a helpful, tiny little episode. Again, join me inside of Roam. Just go to reeducation.school. The entire website is driven to force people into Roam because this is where I want people to take action, be with me for free, and make sure you move your needle in your business. Thanks again.